Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Christian Capitalist Podcast. We're so glad to be joined today by Chris Cumby from here in Northwest Florida, who's going to talk to us today about his life, work, and ministry. Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to see you.
Finally.
Well, exactly. Finally.
You've been away.
I've been away. We've been traveling a ton, visiting our kids and having a great spring break. But here we are in Destin, Florida. It's blue sky.
It's gorgeous
and
day.
Gorgeous day. So natural light coming into our conference room today, and glad to be joined by you. So how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I get up early every day, and today was no exception. I was actually up earlier than normal, 4:15. Yes, it's still really dark, but I was well rested, so I'm feeling great.
That's the way it goes. Yeah. I love it.
I have a routine.
Well, I was just going to say, let's talk a little bit about your morning routine, because a lot of our listeners are athletes. So we have good kind of representation of college and high school athletes.
Nice.
And having spiritual discipline is very important, especially in the season of Lent. We talk about that a lot, but so does one that's physical in nature. So sure. We were just talking about your kind of journey in physical health. Let's get started by talking about that. What's your morning routine look like?
I'll start off with everybody has a routine for sure. Either one works for you or one works against you. Mm-hmm. So I wanted one to work for me. I get up, between usually 4:30 and 4:40. It's usually some weird time in between. But
I'm an early riser too, Chris. Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that. Is that your body clock, or do you set an alarm?
No alarm. That's my body clock. I've been doing it for many years, so I think I'm just, tuned in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's earlier, but like this morning, it was a little bit earlier, 4:15 I woke up. But I was well rested, felt like I needed to get up, and routine's pretty simple for me. Usually it consists of a little bit of time to be silent, not touch anything, no electronics, not my phone. I don't really dive into that until later in the day, or later in the morning, I should say. But I get up and I have a coffee. I love my coffee in the morning. I take a little bit of time to reflect on, what I'm going to do. Then I call my dad. About 4:45, between 4:45 and 5 a.m.
Man.
And we have a chat for probably a good 20 to 30 minutes, just catching up. And I've been doing that for many, many years. I missed a day with my dad for years.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Is he in the central time zone like we are today?
No, he's not. He's actually in Newfoundland, Canada. So a strange time zone, because it's 2.5 hours ahead of us.
Huh.
A half hour.
Yeah.
It's strange, but that's Newfoundland for you. They're good folks, but it's so for him, it's probably creeping close to 7, by the time I call him. But he's an early riser as well. He always has been. But we have a chat, and I'm ready to go to the gym probably by about 5:30. I finish up with my dad. I get into my Bible, and I start reading. I'm on James right now, so I'm going through that book, and it's been great. I've been pulling a lot of little messages and things like that really resonate with me, and I take those messages to the gym. And
I love that,
and I sit there and meditate on them just before I get started.
So let me interject real quick. So that discipline of talking to your dad every day, I can appreciate. My dad, as we have talked about, my dad is living by himself now. My mom is in memory care, even though they're in the same building in San Antonio. So I talk to him on a daily basis as well. But his morning routine is to get up and exercise. And so during the time that we're just talking about, he's up and running.
Up and at it.
But what is it? What have you noticed? Because you mentioned you've done this for years. Mm-hmm. What have you noticed in the relationship with your dad that has developed from talking to him every day? Yeah. How do you feel about it, like compared to when you were a kid?
It's deeper relationship for sure. We've been able to. I've always been really close to my dad, and my mom for that matter. They're still together as well, 57 some odd years, and they're a great couple. But my dad, just him and I have always really just connected, and he's been amazing. Always there for me. So it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. So I think now, though, we just talk about things that are more adult. for one, and and challenges, and how he would, maybe handle it. I get advice from my dad. I really respect him a lot, and he's always been a great guide for me, and he's helps me discern things. He lets me do what I want as well, and he usually tells me "I told you so." But he's great to talk to. I'll probably always talk to him when he's gone as well. So yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
We were just talking. First of all, I must say, because I'm not sure if my parents are going to listen to this, but happy anniversary!
Oh, nice.
Yesterday was their 59th anniversary.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
beautiful.
And it's a wonderful celebration. But yesterday, my wife and I were talking about what the kingdom is. A lot of Christians talk about that. I'm going to go to work today and help build the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And I, as we were discussing it, I thought about the kingdom of heaven, which is both on earth and in heaven, and the communion of saints. So I think what you just said about talking to your dad every day, regardless of whether he's on earth or in heaven, makes a lot of sense, right? Mm-hmm. It's still the communion of saints. What do you think about that?
I absolutely believe in that. And, it's no different than talking to our Father, and like any good child, with gratitude, you get more. So, I've been always a good kid, with my parents. I never really gave them any trouble. I wrestled, so I was disciplined. And that's only because when I was younger, I had to, I was in a rough neighborhood in Toronto, and, I had to fight every day.
Wow.
Yeah. I had to fight. So,
well, for Americans who don't have a lot of experience with Toronto, what you just said is very surprising. That makes it sound like some of our, toughest neighborhoods in America, East LA, the Bronx, whatever.
We have them too.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I grew up in an area called Jane and Finch. It's still pretty rough in Toronto, probably regentrifying, but it was not easy. So by the time I was 9, which is now several years in school, they took me out of that area, and we moved to a suburb called Brampton, and it was way far away, and it had an airport over there close to, and so it just seemed like a better place to grow up, and it was. But they had to figure out how to deal with me because I still had the lion, and I had to figure out things because I was the minority in the area I lived, as a white kid, so it was tough. But they put me in wrestling, and that's where the discipline started. It changed my life. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of back to your discipline, so you're done with your dad.
Yeah.
It is its own discipline to read the Bible. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you're on the book of James. Yeah. How'd you get there? Did you start at Genesis and work your way up?
I think I was working through Genesis and then skipped to James. But it's only because
I'm sorry for laughing. That just seems like, did God call you to do that?
It was like something I read in there that, I believe flipped me to something that I went through the book and saw, James, and I'm like, started to read that. Mm-hmm. And Genesis is a tough, chapter. Yeah. There's a lot of things in there that, I was wondering, like, how did they live so long?
Right.
How did they live so long? And I'm like, what is going on? Can we live that long? And so it was interesting but I sometimes flip around to different books and different messages that I get. And I carry a little tiny book. You saw me bring it in today that I write little notes in and just remember some scripture that really resonates with me. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do at the gym. I think about what I read in the morning. I sit, I meditate, I pray, and then I get to work. I get to work, and I struggle. I struggle through all the exercises for 45 minutes. It's very stringent. As soon as I have my time and now my mental space, now I'm going to work on my physical.
Oh, the physical, I love it.
And I just push through, and it's heavy. I don't have a spotter because no one's there that early in the morning.
Yeah.
So that's been a bit of a struggle, but I figured out a few ways to make sure I can still, get heavier and heavier as I go.
Chris, let me tell you something that we have discussed in the Sanders home for many, many years. Rebecca and I just passed an important milestone. Our youngest child turned 20 in February.
Dang.
So no more teenagers.
Yeah.
But when they were all teenagers, and especially when we had groups of them for an overnight stay or something, we would ask 2 questions. Who comes first? God comes first, right? Mm-hmm. What comes first? Safety. So I would encourage you to please be safe at the gym,
sure.
lifting all that heavy weight of time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So having said that, before we leave off of James, one of the important sayings from the Christian capitalist in the book of James is that James implores his readers to be doers of the word.
Yes.
Right? Have you hit that part yet? As you read
absolutely.
Through? So being a doer of the word, right? The motto of the Christian capitalist is the more we make, the more we give. And part of that is not just giving of, financial means, but as it's kind of a cliche in the church, time, treasure, and talent, right? But more importantly than that, being a doer of the word means you've got to put it in action.
For sure.
What is that? If you have, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have had a chance to reflect on it, what does it mean to you to be a doer of the word?
I think, part of my day is intentional. And I think going out there and, finding ways to connect with the community. I'm a networker, super connector, if you want to call it. So a lot of times I'll go and find a networking event. There's lots going on in the community. If not, just go to a coffee shop, and it's a great place to network.
Yeah.
And, it seems that it's funny because when I do go and do random things, that seems to be more adventurous, if you want, than intentional meetups and things like that. And often I'll sit with people, and Jesus will come up, and it's amazing that because I ask for it in the morning as well. I want Him to guide me. I seek Him daily. I want to hear the Word. I didn't know how to listen. I knew how to pray, and I had to learn how to pray better, but I didn't really know how to listen. And I'll give you some examples. And there were probably during my struggle that I found the challenges create some opportunities. And for me, reflection's always because I journaled my whole life. I write.
I was going to say,
I write in everything I can write on.
That's its own discipline.
It is, and I've learned to express myself through writing because I think you can crystallize your thoughts better rather than digital. In fact, they know that there are 75,000 different neurons that fire when you're writing and thinking, rather than digitally. It actually drops down to a significantly low number. I won't quote it, but it's not near the neurons that fire when you're using your computer or you're using your phone or whatever it may be. And I write things out. And I forget where I was going with that because I flipped gears on it. But can you ask me the question again?
Of course. Well, we were talking about being a doer.
Right, intentional and going out there.
Intentional. And
seeking the Word. Right.
And listening. You had a couple of stories about being a better listener and seeking Jesus.
Yes. And so, going, and I'll give you a real example. And I haven't really talked a lot about this. So, again, a wonderful girl in my life. She was amazing. She still is. But we just didn't work. And, it was hard on me, really hard on me, because this is the lady that I wanted to marry and I wanted to be with. And, I still adore her. She's a wonderful person. But, she said some words to me, and, the words that came out is, I don't think we're going to work out. And at first I looked at her and I was upset with her. But then after probably reflection and thinking and journaling, I realized God was talking to me.
Wow.
And so during my day, and I'm getting chills now thinking about it, God talks to me through people, places, events, circumstances, and things when I seek it. And so every day I seek Him. I seek walking, with Jesus in my heart and looking for opportunity from a perspective of helping people. I've just always been a helper, servant. I podcast too. As you know, podcasting doesn't pay the bills, right?
Right.
But it serves people and it allows us to connect as humans. And I love it so much. So every time I'm interacting with people, I hear the Word.
People, places, circumstances, and things. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because it seems to me, and you and I are never talked about this, but we're very definitely on the same page. It seems to me that when we encounter each other, people, we do encounter God because we're all made in His image.
Yes.
And of course, He made everything around us. Right? And when we find ourselves in situations of either nature or people in nature, right? That's where we're encountering God.
Yeah.
I just love that. What?
Yeah, and I don't play in the devil's domain. I don't interact with him. He has no authority over me, and I had to really work on that because I'm like every other human. We have human condition. Worry, doubts, fears. But I really started to realize that if I play in that space, I'm not going to win.
Well, that's exactly right. Because the only person who has, we just discussed this in the Episcopal Church, we have a lectionary, Lutheran, Presbyterian do it as well. The story of Jesus' temptation in the desert was a couple of Sundays ago. And we talk about that in the prayer at communion during the Lenten season. He, as we all are, was tempted by sin, but he's the only one who didn't fall to it.
Yeah,
it's tough.
And it is.
So the further you stay away, the better off you are.
And when I fall into those negative thoughts or things that are pulling me, I know it's not him.
Yeah,
and that's my indicator. So I, often interrupt that myself and find ways that I can connect. And usually it's just as simple as saying, Jesus, just help me, and keep me away from this stuff. And every time, or I'll put on worship music and I'll go for a walk and I'll, just be drawn into something where I can have praise. And it's been an exciting journey. And I'm new, I grew up as a Protestant Christian. My parents have always been devoted. They've been devoted to each other, God, and they've always worked on the relationship. Me, I didn't necessarily buy into that, when I was young. I went and I did my thing, my will, the way I want to do it. I did really well. I pushed through. I made a lot of money, and I also lost a lot of money.
It's funny how that works.
And so my journey has been interesting because I've seen all kinds of different sides of things. I've seen the riches, I've seen the poor, and it's now for me. Every day since March 16th of last year, I was reborn, and that man that I used to be is gone.
Wow. What happened March 16th?
I got baptized.
No kidding. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We talked about this, I think, a little bit last month, right? In many of the mainline denominations, baptizing infants is the tradition. It goes back to ancient Christianity.
And I was.
Right.
Right when I was a baby.
But the resolution to that infant baptism, because the child doesn't have a chance to speak for themselves, the godparents do, is let's have confirmation. But confirmation in 8th or 9th grade, as important as it is, don't get me wrong, it's still important.
Yes.
It's still not necessarily an adult affirmation of faith, because a 14-year-old and a 53-year-old are in a much different place in life.
Very different.
So what led you to get baptized last year?
I really was being called. I felt like, all the things that I was trying in life, I had some great successes, and then there were some big falls, and it just felt like there was a yo-yo, and I didn't want to be in that environment anymore. So I made a decision that as I buried, all of my old self, I wanted everything that God wanted to take away as well to happen. And Rich, this is the crazy thing. There were so many people plucked out of my life, and I didn't really ask for any of it. As I said, I loved a beautiful woman that I wanted to marry, but she got plucked out as well. And
interesting. So before the baptism,
right after.
Right after.
So I got attacked, quite a bit. A lot of different avenues, a lot of different things.
Yeah. And
so I knew at that point, and I was told, but I leaned into a lot of men. Men poured a lot of love and wisdom and care into me. And I recommend that for, not even, if you're going through struggle, just get around for men anyway, and women. I mean, get into groups that you can really lean into people, because new in the walk as well, it means that, I'm back into the Bible and I'm rereading and I'm learning and I'm like taking things and I'm trying to understand it. So for me, having other men that have been walking way before me, and, they can help me with things. And when I'm in certain spots in life where I want some answers, I'll seek them and we'll have meetings. I get counsel from godly men.
I love that, Chris. You reminded me a couple of months ago, I attended Bible study at a church nearby, maybe 50 guys on a weekly basis. And these two dudes stood up and had a praise report. They said, we've been walking together for 3 years. And I literally thought, like in terms of exercise and discipline, these guys have been walking a couple miles every day.
Yeah.
That may be the case sometimes, but what they meant was we are together in our walk with Christ.
Yeah.
Is that what you have in mind when you say walk with others?
Yeah. Absolutely. Because everybody's busy, right? It'd be great to walk with everybody and have a good chat. But in fact, we should probably do that one day. Just go to the beach and go for a walk together.
Exactly.
In fact, that's a great idea, Rich. And I'll suggest that. But no, it's more knowing that, hey, we're all walking in the same direction, and I know that I can reach out to any one of these guys that I've been with in the last several years. We've started a small group. We go to Causeway Coffee, and I've got some brothers in there that I didn't have a few years ago.
Isn't that cool?
And it's most amazing.
How did that come about? Is that an example of what you were talking about, just sitting in the coffee shop and starting to talk to folks?
Yeah, I mean, it really started with my friend Arlen and myself in a coffee shop at Black Rifle Coffee in Niceville.
I know where that is.
And it was early in the morning. We would meet up, and we started talking about the new coffee shop that was going to be open. And I said he had a beautiful room, and Chris Harper owns Causeway Coffee. Beautiful Christian man, and definitely a lot of wisdom there. And I love him. He's amazing. He's another brother, right? So Arlen and I just started inviting people, and now we're full. And just
Isn't that cool?
Every Friday morning, 8:30 to 10, I don't miss.
Isn't that great?
Unless I'm out of town.
Do y'all do a Bible study?
Yeah. We train each other. We're all business guys, and we all take principles of Christianity, and we talk about that openly on how we can use it in our business as well, and learn from Scripture on things that we can do. And all of them are sharp. They've all got skill sets. Guys know how to build apps. And guys know how to use AI. And there's guys that know how marketing works really well. And I'm a business development and sales guy, so I get to train these guys on how to make more money. And all of the guys contribute. We all contribute, and sometimes it's just telling stories about what they went through, and we learn from what they had to deal with and how they got to where they are. And everybody has an interesting story, and if I can read something really cool,
please.
I'll tell you a little bit about what I I think anyway, is, and again, I journal a lot. So, and I'm just bear with me here as I'm
this is good.
Kind of trying to find it here. But
Jess, if our podcast director, if it's okay with you, we'll take whatever you have and we'll put it in our show notes.
Yeah, please.
Because I want people to be able to reflect on it as well.
And I had a podcast show yesterday, so I actually verbatim talked about this. But I think after journaling so much in life, and looking and reflecting and learning more about walking with Jesus every day, and having my gaze on the Lord, it's I truly believe we can't skip chapters. We just can't skip them.
Yeah,
that's not how it works. We have to read every line. We have to meet every character. We won't enjoy all of them. Some chapters will make me cry, and but you'll read things you don't want to know either.
Yeah.
You'll have moments when you don't want the pages to end either. But you have to keep going in all circumstance, and the stories are what makes this world revolve. And we all have one. Mm-hmm. So I love listening to people's stories. And now Rich, I'm meeting people like you. New people in my life that reflect, who I want to be with.
Yeah.
So my intentions every day are that I want to meet the people that are lift and help me, and I can help them. I also want to, not ignore the guy in the corner that, doesn't feel acknowledged.
Right.
I want them to sit with me too. So, yeah, any chance I get to see anybody that reflects the world I want to be in, I love being around them.
It's so interesting you say that, Chris. I love that because we were talking about the kingdom of heaven and kingdom here on earth. The kingdom includes everybody.
It does.
Our very first podcast guest is a friend of my dad's. They served in the Air Force together in Italy back in the early 80s. And before he came to Italy, he was stationed in the Philippines at Clark Air Force Base and had a chance on a regular basis to meet and learn from Mother Teresa. And so as he was our first podcast guest and told us that Mother Teresa told everybody, each and every one of us is called by God to be someone special to someone else.
Yes.
And that from his perspective, when we talk about as a Christian capitalist, serving the poor and needy in the name of Jesus, from his perspective, in 2024 at the time, there's an epidemic of loneliness in our country, whether it's brought on by these for the younger generation or whether it's brought on by change in life circumstances for folks our parents' age.
Sure.
But that guy in the corner is really important because I'm so glad you said that. To me, it's make the tent bigger, bring people in as best you can.
They've got stuff to contribute. They have a story as well.
Yeah.
And, I genuinely can see myself in them as well. And that's when, compassion, empathy sets in.
By the way, I love what you just read to us. And when you're talking about reading every line and don't skip chapters, I can't help but think of the first 12 verses of Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4. My favorite verse of the Bible, and I have a feeling it's one you like too. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yes.
Right? When you're going for that last rep, I have a feeling there's something
that pushes me
goes that
for sure.
But before that, he says something very similar to what you just said. I know what it is to be hungry. I know what it is to have plenty. I know what it is to be rich. I know what it is to be poor. So tell us about that. You've made money, you lost money. Tell us a little bit about your business journey.
Yeah, I started really young in sales at Pepsi Cola right out of school. And I loved, the corporate environment. I was on a corporate, what they call executive fast track for 7 years.
Wow.
And
was this Pepsi in Canada or in
Canada.
In the States? Okay.
Pepsi bottling company in Canada. But it was a great place for me to grow. Is always my skill sets kind of packaged in one place: business development, sales, marketing, branding. And I learned all of it, and I got trained by, one of the biggest branding companies in the world.
Yeah.
So I really understand business back then, but it was more relationships. I launched Aquafina. No one said that.
Wow.
Yeah. No one said that. Yeah. No one really knows that too much. I don't talk about it too much. But Aquafina was a bottled water, obviously back in the day, reverse osmosis, and Evian was kind of the category king.
Yeah.
It was expensive though. You can only really get it at resorts or spend a lot of money for it. I think even was at some points $15 a bottle for water.
Wow.
For water. Yeah. I mean, now it had to get in line because there's lots of bottles of water. But Aquafina was something that they said that wouldn't do well. But we changed the whole landscape in Toronto. It was really interesting. So I started there. It was a lot of fun, and then I got the offer to get into the energy business.
Oh, okay.
And I had no business being in the energy business. I don't have any background trading or understanding, how natural gas or electricity and all these lubricants and different things work. But I found it a challenge, and it really was the guy I was going to work for. And he was a young 34-year-old at the time, and I was 29. Mm-hmm. He was the CEO of the company, and he did really well. And his name was Brendan Mulcahy, and we're still friends today. But he gave me a lot of new perspectives on wealth. And again, the energy business is the largest in the world.
Yeah.
And I was all of a sudden in this space that abundance, we have an abundance of energy, regardless of what they tell you. I learned a lot about energy and how it worked, but I worked in the corporate. I didn't want to deal with smaller deals. I was always kind of that whale hunter. Mm-hmm. I got into business, and we did really well. My first company that I built, Integrity Energy, we did about $450 million in sales in 18 months.
Wow! And what were you selling?
Electricity, natural gas from large suppliers and helping large users. So I was in the property space. So hotel chains, restaurant chains, and property companies like management companies that own lots of buildings like these. They're energy hogs. So and it's competitive, and you need a hedge risk because if something changes in the market and some of these large users, it really can wipe them out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of risk management in energy. So I learned that relationships and building them were the most important, and I was patient, and we're pretty lucky, building that first company out, and I went on to build some consulting companies and different things like that. But I was a young, naive. I talk about discipline. I just went to work every day. I didn't really think about how I was going to do things. I just knew why I wanted to do it. And a lot of my goals were, hey, if I can make money and then go do things that I would never be able to do as I got older, I want to do it now. So part of that was traveling. I traveled all over the world. So speaking of that, we did about 12 million in profit in 18 months. I was young.
That's a meteoric rise. My goodness.
I was young. Didn't really know how. I didn't have a lot of mentorship, but it was pretty good. I had things, and I just decided that I wanted to learn more about life and people. And I put on a backpack. Went to different countries.
Wow.
And I had different experiences with different people, and it was a lot of fun because I learned more about people, and that was really the I think what set me up for what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
I didn't understand it. And I'll make a comment. Life is lived forward, but you often don't understand it until you look backwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like all of those experiences wrapping up and thinking about them. And I often reflect on a lot of people I met along that journey and how many people I really had, some connection with. And I think that was the first time really I started to see, because, when you go to different countries, there's a lot of Christian countries, and it was amazing to be in a space with, people that, just really understood the word. And I got a chance to see a lot of that. And so for me, I was excited because I would take a lot of those experiences. When I came home, I tried to share as much as I could. And
it's one of the joys of travel.
Yeah. And but I didn't have some guides, back then. And I think that was the big miss for me. So if anybody is young out there and you got to get some coaches and mentors early. I started to afterwards, and then started putting a lot of time and effort into finding the right people that can help me get to the next level and do the next things.
Well, given what we talked about first thing in our interview today, so you got this on a line graph. You just got this profit, line like this. Where was God in this? In your relationship with Him?
I definitely was probably a little bit more new agey, but He was always the center. I still prayed. I still did things. I just didn't know things.
Sure. Well, a lot of that comes with age.
Right? Yeah, it does. So always grateful for sure. And, I also know that I, like everybody, I sinned. I did things that I probably shouldn't have done, of course. And I did a lot of, unfortunately, when I was younger, I tried drugs. And I was disciplined until I was 23. I didn't touch anything. But that talks about the environment you get into.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's the people I was hanging with that had a lot of money. And it was just parties and fun and, all kinds of stuff that, Vegas, Vegas. I'll just say that.
Vegas.
I'll just say Vegas.
Right. And what happened there stays there.
I buried it all.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
And so, the Christian capitalist theme is the more we make, the more we give.
Yes.
Was philanthropy or giving to others a part of your thought process then?
Always.
Or is it now? Okay.
Always.
So what did that look like as a young man?
Yeah, I would find places to give for kids. I was always, I thought about my, upbringing. I didn't have a lot.
Sure.
And I had to deal with fighting and all these things. And so I got into wrestling. So I would give to any youth sports and help in any way I can from a community that I was in. So anybody that I could help and sponsor, things like that. I did a lot of that. I gave away a lot of money. I gave away a lot of money.
And did you have any hesitation about that?
No. It always came back. It always, I don't know. It's like, I don't look to get anything from anybody. I try to serve because I know it's going to come around another way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't, and I had to learn this because when you're in a sales role, especially new and you're young, you're not thinking about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I serve, I help, I try to get people to where they need to go, and then it always gets rewarded another way. And that's what I recognize the most from where leadership. I was to where I am.
Yeah, I love that. Servant leadership.
Yeah.
Hey, so Chris, many of our listeners and viewers are sales folks, real estate, technology, retail, and life on a compensation based on commission can be tough, right? You got highs and you got lows. What's it look like? Because I love what you just said about the confidence of giving, even when you're on a commission-based compensation schedule. Mm-hmm. What's that look like for you, though? How would you encourage our listeners who may have a deal pending? This is March of 2025. May have a deal pending this month, but nothing in the pipeline for next month. Mm. What does that look like for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would recommend get something in the pipeline for next month.
That was not a trick question.
I don't bank on anything. Yeah. I just know that I just try to get more people I can help, more in my sphere of influence that I'm always going to be taken care of, for sure. But it takes action. You have to interact. You can pray for a lot of things, but if you don't go out and do things, then maybe fall on some deaf ears. And maybe you get lucky. I don't know. Maybe you go to the grocery store and you're the one that gets the lottery ticket. But for me, that never happened. So yeah. I had to interact. I had to take action. And so I'm a big fan of making sure that, I'm doing a lot more work now and it will pay me later. And I've always been a commission guy. So I think it's important to continue every day interacting with people and building that network and that pipeline. And, mm-hmm. It's funny how people will come back and refer you to that you don't even know. Mm-hmm. So I try to help anybody I can without anything in return.
I love that. I read that somewhere. Yeah. You're supposed to help others without expectation of return. I think Jesus said that several times.
Pretty much.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to practice all the things that I maybe not necessarily did when I was younger or, really young, I guess. But I learned that through building businesses. Yeah, yeah.
And so
and through failures.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second because I asked you where God was when the profit line's going like this.
Yeah.
We'll get there in just a second, but I want to connect the dots for our folks. Mm-hmm. Would it be fair to say that when you're out there putting stuff into the pipeline, like you mentioned, from a sales perspective, that at the back end, because you're going to give to others, that even in the process of selling, whatever it is you're selling, you're glorifying God because when you get something, you're going to give it back. Mm. Is that a fair way to connect those two?
I would absolutely do that or think that way for sure. I don't know that I connected the dots like that necessarily, but always there would be a need on the other side of doing something that I did good. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, so now I get the connection. So, but I didn't really necessarily see that when I was younger, but now for sure.
That's exactly why I wanted our younger listeners to hear that. Yeah. I'm helping them connect the dots.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Go sell, but don't forget about your poor and needy neighbor when you're doing so.
That's it, and if you think about, and that comes back to why.
Right.
Yeah. Why do you do what you do? Why? Yeah. What do you want?
Yeah. Have you heard of the prosperity gospel? Do you know what that phrase means?
No.
There's a whole bunch of folks out there since basically World War II who have pulled messages from the gospel and the Bible that said God wants us to be rich. If you do what God wants you to do, then you will prosper.
Right.
There are a whole bunch of people who say that. And we talk about that a little bit in the latter half of the Christian Capitalist. My contention is that the prosperity gospel is certainly sound. It's based on scripture, but it's not complete. That the why is not the accumulation of wealth. The why is accumulation of wealth to then share with the poor and needy. That's what God calls us to do, however we define that.
Right.
But having said that, the flip side of the coin, it can also be difficult to manage, and that is, how do you deal with your faith when your business is failing, or where there is no sales, closing in the pipeline? What were those experiences like for you?
Scary.
Yeah,
scary.
Like Job, right?
Yeah. But it's funny. It was scary. I should say that. I should clarify. It's not scary anymore. I had to rebuild my life, and so there were times when, and I just talked about this in my men's group. Rich, I love the nick of time, just in the nick of time, and when I shared that, they all just stopped because they all felt the same thing. Sometimes there's a nick of time, and for me now, like we talked about earlier, I don't go into the enemy's dwelling. I just don't go there. If I find myself thinking about the things I don't want and the scary things of life, and he's got me. He's going to beat me up.
Yeah.
He's going to torture me. I give him no authority, and I have no worries. I don't have any doubt. I don't have fear. I give that burden to Jesus to take care of.
I love that. A woman in our neighborhood named Cami, who's a devout Christian, a terrific sister in Christ, has a tattoo of a sparrow on her foot to always remember that Jesus says, look at the sparrows and how God takes care of them.
That's it.
Will he not take care of you anymore?
Love that.
Because he's, you're his children.
I love that.
I love that. In our men's study last year, one of our participants said he had $20 to his name that was in his billfold, and God called him to go give it away. He took it back to church and threw it in the plate, and so he's literally penniless. And now he's doing just fine. The nick of time saved him. That's so cool.
I have a story like that too. I had about $23 when I was just starting out in energy. It was really tough. Like, you're all by yourself. I was starting my new company. I had some in the pipeline, so I knew things would happen. But there was a movie with Will Smith, and I'm trying to remember the name, but it was
Men in Black.
No, it was the one where Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, okay.
Which is
all right. Yeah.
One of those books that this man had to take care of his child, and they lived in stairwells.
Yeah.
But he had a pursuit. And for me, I remember having just a little bit of money, and I knew some money was coming, but I'm like, I'm going to spend that on going to the movie. I watched that movie. So, sure enough, everything was okay, and it was a nick of time. And I share that because I truly believe in that. I truly believe, but you have to interact. You have to go. You have to have intention.
And faith.
Tons of faith. Be completely full of faith. Because when you are, people, places, events, circumstances, and things,
I love that.
Show up.
I love that. So what's happiness look like for you after March of last year? Now that you're baptized and you're rebuilding your life?
Happiness is good.
I see a smile on your face throughout the last hour.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm feeling really good. I am happy. I actually just had a photo shoot, and they caught me with a good smile, so I posted it, and that's me happy. I think, what I lost, Rich, during some difficult times was my personality. And I truly believe your personality is your personal reality. So for me, it was just getting back to being happy, laughing, helping, knowing that I take care of myself. And that was one thing I leaned into, was the physical part of my life was the opportunity to see immediate change. I say immediate. It took time. 6 months in, I'm jacked up, but at the beginning it was hard.
Sure.
I was 40 pounds overweight, and I couldn't carry myself well, and I was hurting everywhere, my knees, things that as I grew up as an athlete, suck when you're getting older, and everything hurts. So I knew that I had to lean into that. So that makes me happy, and I'm doing the things that, and here's the other thing I like to share. When you're a kid, what did you like to do?
Play.
What did you really like? What did you play?
Oh, as a kid, we played a lot of sports.
Okay, so you went and played sports. So that made you happy. I rode my bike.
Okay.
I went everywhere as a kid on my bike.
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. I did too. My brother and I were cruising everywhere.
My parents had no idea. Remember that saying they used to have on TV? Do you know where your parents or your children are? Remember that?
Yeah.
They used to say it in Canada. It used to be broadcasted. Do you know where your children are at like 9 o'clock at night on TV?
Right.
So that's a good indicator of what the 80s were like.
Exactly.
I was on my bike.
10, and he's on his bike somewhere. Right.
And he'll be home. He'll be home at some point. So I'd be gone on my bike. So one of the things that I highly recommend for people, maybe they're a little older, or like, us, because we're not old.
Right.
Get on the things that you did as a kid. And that's what I do. I ride my bike. If you don't see me or hear from me in this area and people can't find me, I'm on my bike.
I love that.
And I'm in the forest, and I'm riding my YOLO bike. Shout out for YOLO.
I was just going to say, tell us about that, because there's all kinds of different bikes.
Yeah, I use a YOLO Bolt. My good friend Jeff Archer here in Santa Rosa Beach, he made a great bike, and I have one of the original bikes, and it's beautiful. Big fat tires, could go in the sand. I can get it up about 28 miles an hour.
Wow! Without mechanical assistance,
it's a pedal assist, so I'm pedaling too. Yeah, I have to pedal. I don't have like a throttle.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing experience to get into. A space where not a lot mattered, or not a lot. My parents took care of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I reflect on that, that my father's going to take care of everything. Yeah. And like any child, if I show gratitude and I'm really careful on what I do with what he gives me, he'll probably give me more. That's what I tell my children all the time.
Yeah.
If you are thankful and you show gratitude, you'll probably get more.
That's the way it works.
It's really simple.
Because that's one of our core concepts, is that the more we give, the more we benefit. And it's not necessarily in terms of like, I gave $1, I'm going to get $2 back.
Yeah.
You're building treasure in heaven. And as Paul tells Timothy, building the life that really is life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great expression of just feeling the wind in your face, enjoying nature and God's creation, and put your worries behind you. I love that.
Yeah. It's been a great adventure, let's call it. So we can talk about something that...
I was going to ask you, what are you working on now?
Yeah, what am I working on? So really interesting story, because, again, nick of time. I was finishing up some projects, and I was thinking about, what was next, my intentions, and I didn't really want to go to a networking event. I just didn't feel it. I go to a lot of them, and this particular Friday, I didn't really feel like going. And when I don't feel like doing something, now I'm like, I gotcha. You want me to do this. Mm-hmm. That's God.
Yeah.
And so I went, drove 45 minutes, got there, still didn't have the energy, but I'm like, all right, I'm here. I know a lot of these people already, so I'll probably say hi to everybody and then out of here. But this one particular lady came up to me, and her name was Jennifer, and she heads the tourism over in Panama City. And she said, I'd love to talk to you. Terrell told me, and Terrell's the guy who runs the networking event every Friday. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm out the door. Here's my card. Right, exactly. Right. But I didn't spend
more tactfully.
Yes. Right. But she texted me that evening. We got together. That was Friday. Okay. Yeah, we got together on Monday. Because also there was just something she said, and I had no idea what she wanted me to do. But I was called to her office. Remember, people, places, events, circumstances, things. And I'm paying attention because I seek the Lord every day. And this particular moment, the day just didn't feel good. I'm like looking still, and by the end of the night, something's going to happen and I'll be fine. I made my bed that morning, so I already won. But I get there and she says, I don't know really why we're meeting either, but I've got this project. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So she goes, can you jump in my car and let's go look at it? And I'm like, okay. I don't know where I'm going. And so we ended up at this school in St. Andrews School. It's going to turn 100 years old next year.
Okay.
But it got destroyed in, not completely, but the roof was blown pretty much off, and, water leak, and, just ruined the school.
In a hurricane?
In the Hurricane Michael. So it's been sitting there for almost 7 years now.
Wow.
But I'm happy to say we just put a press release out that the roof is going to get fixed.
All right.
We got an endowment from the Historical Institute to start that project. And that's really what we wanted to happen first, because we can't fix the roof. We can't do anything with the school. And,
right.
and when I was introduced to the project, which she, by the way, wanted me to be part of it and help her, because she's so busy. She's got a lot of things going on. And that's the last thing she needed, was a project like that.
Right.
But she's an amazing lady, and we get along really, really well. And so I said yes. I mean, I'm in. Because I walked in the school, and I walked into this beautiful theater of like 300 seats, from built like 1926.
Wow.
And I was like, what
right.
are you doing with this?
Yeah.
Like,
and it's just been sitting there for 6 years.
And I have the chills right through me, because I put on events.
Yeah.
And community, and having a beautiful place like that, I'm just like, this has to be something.
Yeah.
I got the contract, a lot of great movement in the first 30 days, maybe 45 days. We've got a lot of people really paying attention, but we couldn't announce things because we needed the roof to start. And I'm happy to say there's going to be news anchors out there today, and
great.
They're going to talk about what's going to go on there.
So it's St. Andrews School in Panama City. And we're fixing the roof. And then what do you think is going to happen next?
It's going to be a community center point, and there's going to be some really cool things that happen there. There's a lot of ideas still, ideation phase, but a lot of them have been baked out in terms of opportunity. But until you get the structure right, we can't really pursue the things that we want to do. But it'll be arts, entertainment, innovation. There's room for a new restaurant, a coffee shop. I mean, this thing has 22,000 square feet of space on 4 acres of land. And so there's a lot of opportunity over there. And I'm just super excited that, we can now start talking about it, because I didn't want to be rude, but I was looking at my phone.
I know, it's okay.
And I was looking, and I just happened to see she'll be over there. And so when we're done here, I'm actually going to fly down there and hopefully make the news. That's
great. And we'll make sure we put the news broadcast, because this is going to show in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
We'll put the news broadcast
and I'll
our show notes.
Obviously,
Thank you.
As things progress.
So since you got to go, let's wrap up with our signature question. Chris, what does it mean to you to be a Christian capitalist?
To unapologetically grow with Christ as the center of everything I do, so that I can have abundance to share with others. And the resources, I've got talent. God gave me talents, and I want to be able to use them in a way that I can help the community. And that's why, and if I think about it, and I have, Rich, I'm in a community project over there. I'm building a community project here with my Level Up, this September.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my calling. I'm really starting to understand why God gave me that super connector skill, and the business development acumen and the sales savvy, I guess. So I use them all now for the ability to connect with people and bring them together. And as we bring people together, I think we can build a beautiful community. And that's what I'm excited about living here. Like, I came from Toronto, and I was blessed enough to come to a beautiful beach and a beautiful community. And it's changed a lot in 10 years.
Yeah.
And, part of the journey as well, it's not easy to immigrate. I had 2 young children. I unfortunately lost a marriage through that journey, which was hard. Everything was hard. And but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the experiences, the learnings, and now all of that I can help others with. And I know now, like we talked about, looking back and understanding why I had to go through it is it was all necessary, because this smile is real.
Yeah,
for sure.
I love it. God bless you in the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody listening in.
And likewise, thank you all for joining us today. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on the Christian Capitalist Podcast, where the more we make, the more we give.
Bye.